Bugs crashing your pack's party? Whether they've got paws or sneakers, your pack deserves a home that's protected from pests. That's where Wondercide comes in. Plant-powered protection made with steam-distilled natural essential oils that actually work. It kills and repels fleas, ticks, mosquitoes, and ants without questionable ingredients or overpowering smells. Safe to use around kids and pets when used as directed. Lab-proven to work fast. And proudly made in the USA. We offer sprays for pets, people, homes, and yards. Plus, spot-on treatments, collars, and even shampoos. Whatever your pack needs, we've got it covered. Founded by a pet parent looking for a better way to protect her dog Luna, Wondercide's now protected over 21 million lives and counting. You might have even seen us on Shark Tank. Go to Wondercide.com and use code WONDER20 for 20% off your first order. That's WONDER20 at Wondercide.com. Wondercide. Protect your pack with plant-powered Wondercide today.
Hello, this is Aaron West. I am the author of the A24 New Wave. In this book, I look at A24's output and I make the argument that we are in a new wave movement right now. A24 plays a major role. This book has a supplemental podcast where each episode is a brief conversation about an A24 related topic, whether an actor, director, or even a genre. As I continue research for the book and conduct interviews, I expect to record podcast episodes with people involved with the company. You can find the podcast at cinejourneys.com or wherever you find podcasts, and we are proud to be members of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Weird Wave Media.
Welcome back to another Midnight Viewing Noise Junkies crossover. Oh my God, it's becoming a trend. Welcome back, Mr. HP, composer of the Weirding Way Media Network, and certainly a frequent collaborator here, host of Noise Junkies, host of Night Mr. Walters, and my good pal. He's a music man by trade. Mr. HP, how are you, sir?
I couldn't be more thrilled. I feel like I say this every time, Father Malone, but I'm so excited. This is such an awesome movie for us to dig into. So excited.
We certainly seem to be going down the list of childhood musical related films. We did Sgt. Pepper before. And that was a cable box theater one, but this one's going out to everybody. Yeah, of course it is. Anyway, the movie we're talking about this time, directed by Walter Hill, written by John Fusco, starring Joe Seneca, Jamie Gertz, Ralph Macchio, and Steve Vai. And Joe Morton. It's Crossroads, not the Britney Spears movie.
There's a place where deals are made and legends are born. And there was a kid they called Lightning Boy. He was searching for the lost song.
You could be the first man to record it.
For a piece of fame and fortune.
Like Clapton did with Crossroads. The Rolling Stones did it with Love in Vain.
And he was looking to get him there.
Welcome to Bluesville, son. This is the real thing. This ain't no book.
Lightning Boy and Blind Dog. What the hell are you guys supposed to be, huh?
Both bluesmen. Yeah, I'm the bluesman. He's from Long Island.
All I need is a Mississippi string tie. I'm ready to roll.
Yeah, you need a lot more than that.
You know, the owner walked up to Willie, gave him three $100 bills and says your boss can play.
Only one bluesman in town tonight. It was me.
Oh, I choke you.
You do and you get knocked on your...
There's a place where deals are made.
And you made your deal at the Crossroads.
Yeah, I made a deal.
Oh, I get it. You want some kind of contest, huh?
Real smart boy, ain't you?
Where a thin line separates the good
I'm giving you all the magic I got.
from the great.
Willie Brown sent me.
Eugene Martone is ready to cross it. Crossroads.
HP,
Yes.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this was not your first time seeing Crossroads.
Oh no. This would have been 1986. This was a big cable movie. I didn't see this one in the theater. So I saw it probably, I don't know, dozens of times in its day, but since then I've rewatched it many times. This was a real formative film for me in becoming a guitar player. I'm not ashamed to say that this probably inspired me to pick up the guitar and start taking lessons.
Oh, I had thought you had already been playing guitar by the time you had seen this movie.
No, because that would have been about 13 when this movie came out or thereabouts. I might have started taking lessons right around the time, but certainly this was something between this and I would say in a funny way, Back to the Future. Seeing Marty McFly up there at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance playing Johnny B. Good, cheesy as hell. I'm a kid of the suburbs, but these things got me excited to learn how to play guitar. And you could do a lot worse than see Steve Vai up there as Jack Butler doing his thing, but we'll talk about him momentarily.
Indeed, we will. You know what? We're gonna dive right into this movie, but the nominal plot, such as it is, finds Ralph Macchio, a student of Juilliard in New York City, who is become obsessed with the blues and, more importantly, obsessed with the legend of Robert Johnson, the famous bluesman who was purported to have gone to the Crossroads and sold his soul to the devil in order to play the guitar better than anyone on earth, and then gave us 29 songs, but there were supposed to be 30. Eugene, Ralph Macchio's character, thinks he's found a guy who knew Robert Johnson was his harmonica player, Willie Brown, in a nursing home right there in the heart of Manhattan. He's trying to get that song. It's a tantalizing premise.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny because this was really Ralph Macchio's second sort of apprentice type movies. He obviously did Karate Kid just before this. While he was making this and doing taking guitar lessons, he was also taking karate lessons for the upcoming, at that point, Karate Kid Part 2. So his days were pretty full. And he was, I believe he was 25 at the time, playing 17 years old in this movie and doing a great job of it.
He's a good actor. I mean, I certainly think he's good in the role. I don't know. He's pulling off 17, though.
I think he is. There's a confidence and an awkwardness, I think. I mean, he lets that shine a little more in Karate Kid because he's firmly a high school kid there. But I think in this, he's supposed to be a guitar prodigy, a classical guitar prodigy. By the way, did you happen to see one of our favorite actors in a little cameo as his guitar teacher? Alan Arbus. He was on MASH. He's like an Alan Alda type. He was in MASH. He was Carlos Navarone's manager in the Taxi episode where
That's where I know him from.
He's Mr. Sensitivity.
That's
he didn't
right.
have his mustache. That's the only thing. That's why I didn't notice it at first. But
the thing is, HB, I'm conversant in MASH, but I really did not watch that show.
I didn't either. But I guess I'm just such a fan of Alan Arbus. And I it's a delight when I see him pop up. My only problem with him here is he has a very ill-advised accent that was totally unnecessary for
Kind of doing like
guitar teacher.
Yeah, doing like a Brahmin, upper crusty snot.
No, I thought it was more like a Eastern European kind of, as if maybe he was Russian or something. That's what I got out of it.
Oh, I thought he was doing an impression of William Daniels, the voice of Kit.
Not at all. Not at all. But no, I really like Ralph Macchio in this. I like everybody in this, really. I can't point to, there's only one aspect of his performance that bugs me even now after all these years. And there's a few geeky guitar type things
I
that I'm
can't
sure
wait
we'll
for
get into.
those.
Oh yeah.
Boy, we're going to disagree fundamentally about a lot of things in this movie, it seems.
We just might.
This is a Walter Hill film. I don't think there's any better action director at that time. I think there are better action directors now. I certainly think action films have come up to his level in some regards, but none will ever come up to the level of macho masculinity that Walter Hill was always striving for. And of course, he's just trying to get up to the level of Sam Peckinpah, which I don't think he ever quite achieved. But man, he tried really hard. And in some cases, that meant stepping away from action and doing a movie like this, which he's the perfect guy to do it. And I don't really see the downside to his direction here at all.
I don't either. The remarkable thing for me in doing more research on this is I did not realize that this was an R-rated movie. And for the life of me, Father Malone, I can't figure out on what basis it was rated R.
They say fuck a lot.
I guess they do. It just seems rather tame compared to what you can do nowadays. But it's certainly not a violent movie. It's not sexually explicit. But I guess on the basis of language alone, I guess I could see that. But it seems a little unfair.
Yeah, it does. It's not like anyone was going to be damaged by watching this mild tale of a boy or rescuing an old man from a nursing home and helping him get back to his home before he dies, or possibly preventing that.
But I think if we're going to dig into this, I think the first thing we need to talk about is let's talk about the screenwriter, John Fusco.
Is
right?
it Fusco
Now
or
this,
Fusco?
I don't know. I'm going to call him. Fusco is probably.
I'm going to continue to call him Fusco. If I'm wrong, I apologize, Mr. Fusco.
I apologize. Yeah, I apologize. Right. So Fusco. Now he was enrolled was it NYU? He was on the screenwriting track at NYU, and this was his master's thesis, this screenplay. Now he was a blues musician. He was somebody who I think he played guitar, and from what I have read, he was told by his doctor that he had to take some time off from singing because he had damaged his vocal cords or something. And in the meantime, he was taking time off from playing music. And his girlfriend worked at a nursing home, and she said there was an old African-American fellow there who played harmonica. And this inspired Fusco, to start writing this screenplay. And eventually, I think he sold it for something like 250 grand. Which I would guess in 86, 85 that's a lot. It's a lot of money anyway, but it's probably way more. It's probably $500,000 now.
That's a huge sum, man.
But let me ask you, Father Malone, this is really a rhetorical question. What else would we know John Fusco from?
I know that I certainly know him from Young Guns and Young Guns 2 in particular. Now, you say the names of those movies and people just brush them off as, the Brat Pack Western. Aha, isn't that silly? Isn't that fun? They're trying to play cowboys and shit, right? And to a degree, I agree with that for the first film because it does feel a little stunt casty. Look at all these young studs out there riding and roping and on the range. The second film, however, which is the actual story of Billy the Kid and Pat Garrett, is my favorite cinematic interpretation of their story. And I am fully aware of Peckinpah's Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid's existence. I've seen it in the theater. I've seen the extended cut. I love the movie. I listened to the soundtrack just the other day. Young Guns 2 is a better representation of that story between those two guys. And John Fusco's script is the fucking reason why. It is so well researched. It throws off a historical fact with aplomb. Like, it's very economical at giving you all the facts of those two guys' lives while never ceasing to be a rip-roaring fucking action movie. It's the rarest of films.
I love Young Guns too. Loved it. I enjoyed the first one, but like you, I fucking loved the second one. I saw it in the theater. I am no student of Western cinema. I will admit that. So I'm sure that there's probably it's somewhat derivative of other movies that came before it. But to your point, I think it's so economically written, and it's for it being another in this sort of Brat Pack type Western movies, it had the balls to have they all died. It would have been so easy for them to set it up for another sequel because these stars were all hot. They could have probably made another few of these movies, but yet everyone died. They're not presented glamorously at all. It's a fantastic. We're not here to talk about Young Guns 2, but I am here to say
we are talking about John Fusco, and this is one of his things. So
I love it. So I'm a fan of his work. And I was surprised when, I don't remember when I learned this, but to learn that he wrote Crossroads, which is one of my all-time favorites in addition, was really cool to learn.
And it is a really good script. I have some problems with it. It feels a bit like a first screenplay to me, but I do love when you hear someone's master's thesis goes immediately to film. The other one that immediately springs to mind is, what's his name? Gregory Wyden was the name of that screenwriter. And then, which is funny because he had been a firefighter and would eventually write the screenplay for Backdraft. You would think that would have been his lead off.
Because that's what he knows best. Yeah.
What you know is, no, I think my first screenplay will be about immortals fighting with swords in New York City in the modern times.
And yet that's what he's best known for. That is what has given him that cult status, right? They're even still talking about remaking Highlander even now, 40 years later. It could be a very good thing and a very bad thing. We'll have to see.
I'm cautiously optimistic. Henry Cavill as the Highlander. I'm okay with that.
Oh, I like Henry Cavill because he feels like a geek that was just born into this Adonis type body. I think his heart's in the right place. I think,
and we'll finally hear Connor McLeod do a proper Scottish accent.
If I'm looking at this movie with a bit more of a critical eye towards theme, one could look at this and see this as an example of just some white kid who's got to come in and be the savior for an African American in need. I don't subscribe to that point of view. I think it's just a good story, but I could see somebody looking at this and saying, yeah, maybe not the best look, but if no other reason, this was made in 1985, 86. I think I'm going to give it a pass. I'm not about to cancel this because I think maybe thematically there's some hinky stuff to our modern day eyes, but I just had to put that out there because it is something that you could probably dig into if you wanted to.
Here's the last thing I'll say about John Fusco. He had a movie in 2019 called The Highwaymen with Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson about these two Texas Rangers who are hunting down Bonnie and Clyde, which is also really great. So everyone check that out. Now, to the white savior point you were making. Yeah, that's what I thought when I saw this movie. I saw this movie in the theater, by the way, because I mentioned him. Walter Hill is one of my all-time favorite filmmakers. Walter Hill directed The Warriors. He directed 48 Hours. He'd eventually direct Deadwood when that came out. He did another 48 Hours. That's a great one, too. No, it's not. It's terrible.
No, it's not.
Anyway, he is a favorite of mine. And of course, any new film of his I was going to go see. So I was definitely involved in this. Now, okay, you know what? Before we head further into this, let's just talk about the music for a moment, because the music in this film nominally is composed by Ry Cooder, and he is a frequent Walter Hill collaborator. Starting back in 1980, I think with Southern Comfort, and everything up until, I want to say maybe Geronimo. He did all of his scores. Now, Ry Cooder is a legendary Los Angeles session musician and a renowned bluesman. I think the first album of his I bought was The Slide Area. It's from 1981, which is all pedal steel and very reminiscent of what we were going to get here. Of course, I wouldn't have known to go buy any of his stuff until after this movie came out. And I think this movie is what sort of cemented in my mind that this is his musician. This is Walter Hill's go-to guy, and to look further into him. But when we'll get to Ry Cooder, but before that, would you or would you not agree that the majority of white suburban America's introduction to the blues are thanks to Mr. Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi?
Unquestionably. We were indoctrinated when we were so young, Father Malone, watching the Blues Brothers, the movie. So many great R&B and blues musicians in that. And we didn't know. I didn't know who Ray Charles or James Brown or any of these people were.
Or John Lee Hooker.
Or John Lee Hooker's he's the best example. He's somebody that, at least James Brown was known as this towering R&B figure. But John Lee Hooker was always on the cusp of just being a bit unknown. But hearing Boogie Chillin' on the radio there and seeing him perform in the streets of Chicago.
I love that talk, that baby talk. But when you talk like that, I can't take it like that. How. Hey, come on.
That was certainly my first exposure to the quote unquote real blues, and not something that was like white blues appropriated from England in the 60s.
So there is a current of resurgence of the blues going on around this time period anyway. And I think if there's a filmmaker who would have the wherewithal to get a movie made about the blues, it would be Walter Hill at this time, and also the juice to get it made at this time. Although I'm a little confused because he had just had Streets of Fire, which was a terrible, horrible failure of a film financially. I love that movie. It's a good movie.
Crossroads wasn't like the last movie that he made that was a big budget studio movie. I'm looking at his IMDb. He did, remember Trespass with Ice-T?
Oh, yeah.
He did Johnny Handsome.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Did,
and you know what? What's funny is when you mention those movies to me, the first thing that comes to mind is the grinding guitar scores by Ry Cooder.
Right. I think for me, the last sort of big budget studio picture that I remember him making was probably Last Man Standing, which was the Bruce Willis, I think it was like a remake of, was it
For a few dollars, for a fistful of dollars.
Yojimbo.
And Yojimbo, yes.
Yeah. But after that, I think he started moving into a little more TV. He still did Undisputed with Ving Rhames and a few other things. But
you know about that Yojimbo thing. Yojimbo is an unofficial adaptation of The Glass Key by Dashiell Hammett, right? Which is a gangster movie. Okay,
I did not know that.
A gangster novel, right? So he makes Yojimbo, turns it into a samurai film. And then not Ennio Morricone, fucking, what's his name?
Oh, Sergio Leone.
Yeah, so then Sergio Leone says, hey, that samurai thing, that would make a good Western, and turns it into a Western. And then Walter Hill says, hey, you know that Western? That would make a good gangster film.
Yeah. It's like a game of telephone where it just keeps getting pulled away from the original.
It is, because that original book, it takes place in like Chicago or something like that. It's just a normal town that this gang war is taking place in. By the time it gets to Walter Hill's film, it's like this post-apocalyptic like border town where there's nothing but gangsters.
So Ralph Macchio's guitar coach for this movie was a guy named Arlen Roth. Okay, Arlen Roth, I believe, can lay claim to being the first sort of guitar guy who put out a series of like VHS lessons, like Hot Licks or something it was called, right? So he ostensibly taught Ralph Macchio, if not how to play the music, at least how to mime it as good as he could do it. So it's my understanding, although obviously Ry Cooder is credited as the guy who did the soundtrack, it's my understanding that a lot of the slide guitar stuff that you hear, the stuff that Eugene plays throughout the movie, a lot of that, a good portion of that is actually Arlen Roth playing the music. But for some odd reason that no one seems to really know or convey, Arlen Roth's credit on Crossroads is all but excised. He's not credited anywhere in the music credits, I don't believe. He may have a credit somewhere for guitar teacher or something, but I do want to say, I want to make sure credit's given where credit is due. I do believe that I'm not going to sit here and say that Arlen Roth did everything, but I think he did a lot more than he's credited for doing, which is zero. So I thought that was interesting. Do we have any idea of what particularly is his in the film or on the soundtrack? No, we don't. That's the thing. We don't. And frankly, I don't know enough about either man's style to be able to go, oh, that's definitely Ry Cooder and that's definitely Arlen Roth. But I do know that Arlen Roth was on set. He was, like I said, he was Ralph Macchio's guitar coach for the duration of the picture. And for some reason, he wasn't given credit. And I don't know why. He doesn't seem to know why either in interviews. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head any differentiations between guitarists and styles, but I could tell you when Ry Cooder is playing.
I know his style at least that well. Man has 30 albums, and I have too many of them.
He's a legend. He played on probably one of my favorite Monkees tracks, which is off of the album Head. It's called As We Go Along. It's not, he's not necessarily like doing a showy solo, but he's part of that track. He's part of the vibe. And I think it's an amazing song, and his playing is wonderful.
Secrets and let down your head and sit with me here by the firelight.
There has to be a movie made about the 60s session musicians in Los Angeles. Maybe a TV series on Netflix.
There's all sorts of, because these are musicians that really didn't get much credit. I know there was a Wrecking Crew documentary, and there was a documentary about the session musicians from the 70s that played on like James Taylor and all these other, Linda Ronstadt. So there must be some sort of fictionalized take on that would be really interesting. I would see it.
Me too, man. I'd watch the fuck out of that. Just like I would watch Crossroads anytime.
That's right. I would too. So the music's pretty well covered there. The only what's a little jarring now when you listen to it is there's a lot of 80s-ness. It's blues. You're hearing mostly just blues through the whole picture, but it's that 80s blues with the sort of reverb-laden drums, a lot of chorus on the guitars and everything. There's just the sound. There's an ineffable quality to 80s music, including 80s blues music, that is all over this. And it, if nothing else, it dates this movie immediately.
It's not exactly the sound of Delta blues.
No, not in the least. But it works. Because these are really good musicians, because Ry Cooder is amazing. He's a tremendous slide player, so it's a lot of that's forgiven. But yeah, it's a little dated.
Okay, here's my 2 cents about the white savior thing, by the way.
Yeah.
This character should be black. There's just no question that this should be a young black man who, in the middle of the 1980s, when popular culture, everything was R&B and or hip hop, to have a young black character like going back through his roots, even though he's okay. No, that makes it even trickier, because my other problem can be found at the end of the movie during the cutting head sequence.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll revisit this particular topic, the white savior topic, because I don't have a problem with the white savior. It doesn't have to be a white savior. It can be just an interested character who is a total outsider, and the outsider helps facilitate the thing from the community that he's not part of. That's fine by me.
But to the movie's credit, to Fusco's credit, there's a scene where Eugene has finally exposed Willie Brown for being this legendary blues man, and he has sprung this idea on him that you'll teach me this song, and then we'll take it and we'll, and one of the things Willie Brown says is, he basically says, "Now you're just like every other white guy. You're just going to take the music and you're going to make it, its own thing." That's true. That's exactly, it would be basically be appropriated by a white guy taking it away. It's cultural appropriation. That's exactly what it is. And at least in that moment, the screenplay seems to be aware of that, the danger there.
It doesn't even allude to it. Like Eugene says, just like Clapton
with Crossroads. Yeah, that's what he says.
Just like Clapton with Crossroads. I'll be able to. And which, by the way, if Willie Brown here is making his point, and does he say? Oh, no, he just says another white boy, right? But we've already,
he just another white boy taken.
They've already planted fucking Clapton's name in my mind, and that's all I think when I think of Eric Clapton. When I hear that fucking Crossroads song come on the radio or something, I'm just like, you fucking thief. You shot the sheriff. Fuck you.
I'm not such a fan of Clapton anyway.
He's a racist piece of shit.
That's exactly why. He's a racist piece. I don't care if he was smacked out, and maybe that he said those things. There's no going back from that. And he said
those things multiple times on multiple occasions. Oh, it was the drink talking. It was the drugs talking. It was him talking. I've never been so drunk that I've suddenly become a racist.
I totally agree. I to be honest, like his music, I was never that thrilled by it. Just on a musical level, put aside all the other stuff, I never really got the Clapton is God stuff. Maybe I'm just willfully ignorant of the man's place in music. I don't think I am. I think I know a little bit, but it was never.
You know what? He existed at the same time as Jimmy Page and Jimi Hendrix. Go fuck yourself with this Clapton worship.
Yeah. There's Alvin Lee. You could the list goes on. There's a million. Rory Gallagher. The man is the king of the blues, and he was an Irishman. Get the fuck out of here. There's ways to do it. There's an authentic way to do it. And I don't know how authentic Clapton is ultimately. Now watch all this hate mail is going to come in for you. All these listeners going, what are you talking about? Clapton's God. Anyway.
They'd be wrong. I would agree with them, but then we'd both be wrong.
This is true. Yeah. But one thing I want a slight correction, and this is important to the story, I think, is you had mentioned Eugene springs Willie Brown from this rest home or this nursing home, but it's really not a nursing home, Father Malone. In actual fact, he's basically in prison. He's been in prison for something like 20 years, 25 years up to that point for shooting a man. So it's not necessarily that he's this cuddly, it's not like Cocoon where he's getting busted out of a nursing home. The man admitted that he shot someone in the neck. So I like that about this. Willie Brown isn't some saint who needs to be rescued from all of this sort of stuff going on. The man shot somebody, willfully shot somebody.
Yeah, Willie Brown is a fully functioning character, definitely. And yes, obviously, I made it seem like it was Cocoon.
Yeah, they play that up a little bit when there's that sequence where they actually spring him, where Eugene comes and
nobody cares.
That's the other thing. He springs him from this prison. He breaks him out of jail effectively. And I know it's a nursing home, but it's jail. And they proceed to do nothing about it. No one ever tries to find Willie. No one puts out an APB on a kid and an old black man on the run. That's it. Maybe they're just happy that Willie's out of their hair. I don't know.
That's what I liked about that sequence. The utter lack of magnitude of the actual event.
It's funny because they make their way to this cab that Eugene has left waiting outside, and a cop car starts screaming towards them with lights and sirens blaring, and Eugene freezes because he says to himself, well, this is it. The jig is up. And then the cop car just proceeds to keep going down the road, wherever it's actually going, whatever call it's attending to. They don't care about Willie Brown.
No, so Eugene is springing Willie Brown because Willie Brown has promised if he gets him out and gets him back down south to Mississippi, he will reveal the 30th missing song from Robert Johnson. And that is just so tantalizing. But speaking of Robert Johnson, let's go back to the opening scene, if we could. Tuvok, the Vulcan.
Is he one of the engineers?
On Voyager. And here he's Robert Johnson making a deal with the...
I thought you were talking about one of the... Okay, I was thinking of not Tuvok. Who is the guy who is Spock's brother? Lawrence Luckinbill.
No, the character's name.
Cybok.
There you go. Spock. What's going on up there on Vulcan?
So he's playing Robert Johnson performing Crossroads at the very beginning of the picture.
Now, we never get to see Robert Johnson interact with the devil. It's just hinted at. And they're going to keep playing at that through a lot of the movie. Every time we get to one of these flashbacks, it's sepia-toned haziness, like he's trying to recreate 1938 Mississippi in the best way possible. I'm surprised he didn't resort to skipping film and stepping on it and adding scratches to it. I guess he just didn't want to go that far. But I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I have a music question for you. It's about the debate, the Robert Johnson sped up, slowed down debate.
I'm so glad you're bringing this up because I was prepared to if you didn't. Go for it.
So there is a popular theory that during the recording of Robert Johnson's songs, the machine itself was sped up or undercranked by something like 20%. So if you take his songs and speed them up, you get a jauntier version. And The only thing that gives it credence is it sounds good either way. It's a little, the guitar playing is a little worse in the sped up version. It sounds like he's making mistakes, but it does sound credible. So I want to get your take on it because I have mine. And so there are people who believe that's the case, and there are people who don't. And I think ultimately, whether or not it's true or not, we're still going to continue listening to those original recordings of Robert Johnson.
Sure. I believe that they were recorded slowly. The commonly held theory, one of the commonly held theories, is they did that so that they could fit more music on a record, on a 78 RPM record, right? So they had the music when recorded sped up so they could fit more. By all accounts, Robert Johnson had a low resonant voice. And anyone who listens to a song like the original Crossroads, it's not. It's almost like a high keening. It's like an upper register. It's hard to really explain. I've heard the YouTube videos of people that have slowed it down by a factor of 20%, like you described. And I think it sounds much more like musical to me. It just sounds less frantic, less adenoidal, because that's a technique that people used to use to make someone sound younger. Like the song Caroline No by the Beach Boys, that was actually sped up a little bit too. They just turned the IPS switch up a little bit to make him sound younger. So that's not why they did this to Robert Johnson. But I think when you listen to it slowed down, I think it's a much more credible and listenable performance personally. But what do you think?
Okay. So you're saying that his songs were recorded and then in a kind of post-production situation, they were shortened or slowed down or sped up?
No, I think when they were being recorded, they were recorded at a slightly slower speed. So when you play them back, they play back naturally faster.
Okay. So they would have to fiddle with the machine itself.
Yeah, either deliberately, but it's also probably just as likely that these machines aren't precision calibrated machines. They were being recorded essentially in like a hotel, like in a room. It wasn't like they were in a recording studio per se.
And that machine had been carted there and probably rolled across things and carried upstairs and dropped, and
who knows? So it's also possible that this whole theory that they were trying to fit more music on a record is bullshit. It could just be that the equipment wasn't properly calibrated, or it just recorded slower. So when you played it back, they didn't know that. It's not like they're sitting there with a tuning fork saying, oh, this is at 440 hertz. This is perfect. Because I also have heard that some songs are more likely to be sped up than others. Like it's not a universal across this whole catalog. So it's a very mysterious question that you're posing.
Now, I've heard that the entire catalog of songs was recorded on 2 machines. The theory is, or at least the counter theory is, that it could not have been the machine's fault. It couldn't have been a mistake because the mistake wouldn't have been crossed over from machine to machine. It couldn't have glitched twice to 20%. However, if they were doing it there on the day to each machine and actually fiddling and making it slower, then that theory is plausible.
Could be. I just know for me, actually, after watching Crossroads, I went out and got the same Robert Johnson cassette that Eugene plays in the picture with, it's like this sort of cartoonish image of Robert Johnson's back as he's playing. But partly because I just don't think my mind wasn't calibrated to really understand this music. I didn't like it because it just, I don't know, it was a little frantic. It wasn't like John Lee Hooker. That to me is classic blues, right? Low voice, nothing but the guitar and his foot tapping. And it took its time. It wasn't frantic. Whereas I found the Robert Johnson stuff a little more hyper to listen back to.
John Lee Hooker's Burn in Hell is the greatest blues album of all time. Ripley agrees with me. She just barked really loud. Said it, so
I would agree with you there too. The man is a giant. He lived it.
I don't know where I fall. I like the idea of, because it sounds so natural when you listen to the sped up. Robert Johnson vocals. And now, obviously, you're going to listen to them here, folks. Here's the original.
Blues falling down like hill, blues falling down like hill. And the Jane keeps on wearing me. It's a hellhound on my trail, hellhound on my trail, hellhound on my trail.
Okay, and now here's the sped up version.
Blues falling down like hill, blues falling down like hill. And the day keeps on wearing me. It's a hellhound on my trails, hellhound on my trail, hellhound on my trail.
Both are pretty credible, right? But
I think the slower one, I think, just sounds more natural to me.
I know, but I'm just so used to the other one that it just sounds like somebody covering Crossroads, and they just have they tap their toe a little bit faster.
If only Bill and Ted went back in time to the Mississippi Delta and they brought Robert Johnson back instead of Beethoven, maybe we'd have an answer to this question, Father Malone.
That's true. Or somebody could check with Ulysses McGill from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? They basically meet Robert Johnson at the end of that movie too, out on the Crossroads. He might have the answers there. He didn't sound sped up there.
No, but I can point to Crossroads as being the thing that kind of I was inspired to seek out Robert Johnson. It just didn't stick because I just couldn't get into the music. I don't know what it was, but the man I can say just he was an amazing guitar player. I wish I could play slide guitar like he did. Amazing.
Do you play slide guitar?
No, I could never. It's the tricky part about slide guitar, Father Malone, is that normally when you're fretting the notes, you're putting your finger between two frets, whereas with a slide, you're resting the slide itself on the upper part of the fret itself, on the piece of fret wire. So not in between the frets, on the fret itself, over the fret itself. I also believe that you have to tune your guitar in what's called open tuning. I think it's open G, so that when you lay that slide over the whole of the strings, it plays a chord. Because normally you're making a chord by crunching your fingers in all sorts of interesting ways. But if the whole guitar is tuned to an open G chord, you just lay that. It's easy you can play any chord anywhere on the fretboard with one finger, basically.
So what's your trouble?
It's hard for me to recalibrate my fingers. I haven't tried it in many years, to be fair, but I had trouble recalibrating my brain to play it as opposed to just fretting the notes normally. I don't know. It's just to be honest, I didn't spend a great deal of time trying to learn, but it's cool. Someone who does it well, like Cooder, it's an amazing sound.
By the end of this podcast, you're going to have to play some slide guitar for us.
I think a lot of people were inspired by this movie to delve into the blues, and that's probably one of the very good things about this movie, if nothing else.
I agree. Any of these 1980s movies that were urging anyone toward any sort of artistic area that they might not have been exposed to, look, I'm going to sound real old here, but there was a pre-internet time, and exposure to any other culture was welcome, even if it was freighted with a white savior. Like Lawrence of Arabia is just a bunch of white people out there in the desert pretending that they're Bedouins and such, but at least we got to see that culture in some way. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It just feels like we were cut off from the world in a lot of ways. So having this entree into the blues beyond the Blues Brothers, which is a total fantasy, at least, look, this is not in any way reality, but at least we're getting a look at the actual blues people or their lifestyle and what it was like for them, because we do get vignettes of what it's like being a bluesman on the road in the South. Kind of should have made this a period piece in like 1949.
Well, the whole legend of Robert Johnson going down to the Crossroads and making a deal with the devil, to me, as a 13-year-old kid, and probably a lot of people, that's a very, for lack of a better word, that's a very alluring tale. That's you're drawn to that. That just, I remember I heard the same thing about Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin. Like they made a deal and they had backmasking with devil messages and all this nonsense. I love the fact that this movie takes that legend as its starting point because Robert Johnson was a real person and that was a real legend surrounding the man, that he went down to this crossroads in the Delta and he sold his soul to the devil. I think that's what a great starting point for kind of a fantasy about this kid going down and helping this old man steal his soul back. I think it's great.
It's a legend just tailor-made for cinematic adaptation. Here's this great music. Here's this great legend. All of that happened, by the way. And now you can do whatever we want with it. Also, it wasn't that long ago. So one of our leads can be the contemporary of Robert Johnson. It's crazy to think about this, but like when this movie takes place, it was 50 years prior.
Yeah, think about 50 years ago. It was
75, man.
Yeah.
It was like SNL was on the air.
It's insane. It is. When you're a kid, especially 50 years might as well be 150. But as you and I age, we realize that's an eye blink. That's not long ago at all.
This would be like breaking Dan Aykroyd out of the SNL nursing home to get him to down south where he can be a blues brother again. Like that's apt.
It's crazy.
Just as far as like how long ago it was, like, you know, there are people seeing this movie who could potentially knew Robert Johnson.
Yeah, it really wasn't that long ago. The movie makes it feel like it's ages and ages ago because he always goes to that sepia, like you said, that sepia tone look and the tack piano playing blues chords in the background. But by the way, I really like those little interstitial, or not interstitials, but I like those little interludes in the movie where you see Willie Brown dealing with the devil's assistant, and
why are those scenes so good, HP?
Why are they so? I just think they're cinematic. I don't know. They feel heightened in a way, and I like that about this. It creates this witchiness, for lack of a better term, about this whole, because mostly this movie takes place in very mundane places, like a flop house here or, you know, an old barn here. But there's the way it's shot too. It's very compelling. The crossroads with the one sort of dead looking tree off to the side and somebody just standing there waiting for the devil to offer them a ride. That's so compelling. That's so cool.
I have two words why those sequences are so good. Joe Morton.
He doesn't really have a name, does he?
Yes,
He's
he does.
Just the devil.
Scratch's assistant.
That's what I mean. He's not Legba or Scratch. He's just Scratch's assistant.
It should just be the devil. Joe Morton should just be the devil. I'm not saying that I'm disappointed when the devil shows up, because I'm not. When Scratch, Legba, the devil, when he shows up, he's fucking awesome.
He's great.
It's a little disconcerting that we deal specifically with Joe Morton for the entirety of the thing. And then in the end, we get this one guy who we're going to deal with the battle for, and we've only just met him. So even as great as he is, it's yeah, but you're not the guy.
Joe Morton may as well be the devil because, like you said, he's the one that really interacts with all these characters. But yeah, he's so derisive and dismissive to everyone that he deals with. You would think he would, if the devil's going to come and try to make a deal for your soul, he's going to come with honeyed words and all this kind of stuff, but not Scratch's assistant. He calls him like Four Eyes and
hey, blind boy, come over here. What's your name, Four Eyes?
My name Willie Brown, sir.
What you doing on these crossroads alone, Willie Brown?
Robert Johnson told me I can make a deal here.
A deal? With who?
Like, there's nothing cheery or nice or welcoming about Scratch's assistant or about Joe Morton. He's like not a nice guy. But what I always thought was really cool is, so he goes to, Willie Brown goes to the crossroads as a young man. It's one of those sepia shots. And Joe Morton's character drives up in an old 1920s car or something, and he makes the deal with him. And then when you flash forward, and now he's on the crossroads with Eugene as an old man, Joe Morton comes back, only now, because it's the modern day, he's driving a Trans Am, and he's all decked out in modern day. He hasn't aged a day, but he's still keeping up with the contemporary trends and cars and fashion and all that. I love that.
And Props has blacked out the Trans Am logo from the front of the car, I noticed.
Oh, did they do that?
No.
It was unmistakable for me just because I've seen a ton of those in growing up. But no, it's great. I love those sequences at the Crossroads, particularly.
Here's the thing that I noticed this time watching. When he shows up the second time in the Trans Am, he has a consort, a petty little she-bitch with him. She should have been with him the whole time. She should have shown up with him in the 30s and with pin curls. She should have always been. It would have been great.
I wondered about that too, because she's so prominent during the head cutting scene.
That's why I said it, because she's out on the floor. She's basically performing the anti-Willie Brown number on stage.
Yeah, she should have been there too, in the era appropriate fashion in the 1920s.
She should be Scratch's assistant. He should be Scratch. Because the thing I liked about Scratch when he finally does show up is he is the honeyed word guy. He gets hard when he has to, but really he's sweet and welcoming.
He is, but there's one moment that I never really thought about until I was rewatching. I probably watched it 3 times over the weekend, Father Malone. And he's talking with Willie, and Willie, he basically tries to make a double or nothing bet because Willie wants his soul back. He wants him to tear up the contract.
Unless you might want to sit in for it. Don't do it.
Sure, he's my friend. I don't believe in any of this shit anyway.
I say don't do it, Lightning. You win, I tear up Willie's contract. But what happens if my man Jack Butler wins? You get me. I already got you.
I swear to you, Father Malone, there's something primal in his eyes. Like, it's almost like with all of the honeyed words and the smiles and everything, his eyes in that moment aren't smiling because he knows I already got you, Willie. Like, you give me something more, because he wants the kid. He wants Eugene's soul also. But that's the only moment really where you see that mask of civility fall a little bit from Scratch, and you see this guy for who he is. Frankly, I don't know much. I think the actor who played him was more of a theater actor. He only has 2 or 3 credits in IMDb, and he died shortly after this. Before the movie was released, he died, unfortunately, of stomach cancer. But he's phenomenal in this. I love him in this.
The moment you're describing occurs again in the same scene, and that's when Willie Brown begs off that he was not given what he was promised.
You can tear that up and give me some peace. Why on earth would I want to do that? Now, you sloughed up on your end of things. I didn't end up where I wanted. I didn't end up with nothing. Didn't get nothing. You got what you were supposed to get, bluesman. Ain't nothing ever as good as we want it to be. But that ain't no reason to break a deal.
I love this guy. I love that actor. So I'm happy with him being Legba, but maybe he should have been in the car, and Joe Morton should have been his sidekick, and Joe Morton could have been cruel and mean while the devil's being nice.
It's, if nothing else, it's an embarrassment of riches. This sort of devil and his consort. It's great. Leading up, I mean, the
fact is, I like their characters so much because truly, in rewatching this movie, when I was able to identify what I not liked about the movie finally coalesced, HP, and that is our 3 leads are a bunch of pricks. All 3 of our leads are insufferable in their own ways.
Now, when you say 3 leads, you're talking about Eugene, you're talking about Willie. Are you talking about Francis also?
Well, of course, I'm talking about Miss Jamie Gertz.
Yeah, I can excuse Willie Brown. I think it's great that they made him a prick, because it would be so easy to make him this saintly old man who just needs another chance. The fact that he lies to Eugene to break him out of this prison, essentially, and he's not so nice to Francis when he meets, although they do make up at the end. But him I can excuse, and I think it's appropriate for him to be a dick. And I guess Francis, like, she's a runaway. Why wouldn't she be embittered? And
all her character does is get them in trouble because she's an amoral nightmare.
Pretty much. Why
Eugene
do you think Eugene
is an insufferable prick? His motivation here is to get famous. And then only to compound it, he has his one night up on the stage, which, by the way, that situation is manufactured by Willie Brown to get Eugene out of trouble.
Yeah. Because he blows
a moment of triumph there, just playing guitar passively. And then he turns into a megalomaniacal nightmare.
I don't disagree with you there. After he performs at the juke joint, and then he's so wired on the adrenaline of performing and doing well, he in that moment he is a prick. I agree with you there. And
the rest of the time he's just complaining about, you lied to me, Willie. You know, where you, this is all bullshit, Willie. What the fuck, Willie? Where's my fucking song, Willie? It's just like he's just a jerk.
But Willie did lie to him, though. Willie says to him at the beginning, because he says, well, how the hell are we going to get down to Mississippi? And Willie says, I got this bankroll right here. I've had it forever. And he pulls out a wad of bills.
Yeah.
They make it so Eugene has enough money to get them to Memphis. It's still a long way to Mississippi. So he says, all right, give me the money, Willie. Because Willie says, you get us to Memphis, I'll give you the money to get us the rest of the way to Yazoo City. So he gives him the billfold, and he even says to Eugene, why don't you count it first? And then Eugene counts it, and it's $40 with newspaper underneath it rolled up to make it look like it's a big wad of cash. What would you do in that moment, Father Malone? This guy promised, you're already hundreds of miles away from New York. You got no fucking money. You got no transportation. What are you going to do? Of course you'd be pissed.
I'm going to take $40. I'm going to rent a car and I'm going to go back to New York. If his reaction is anything but rent a car and go back to New York, get on a train, go back to New York, take a bus back to New York. If his reaction is anything but, then shut the fuck up for the rest of the trip, young Eugene. He does have a valid reason to be mad when he finds out there is no song.
But that's the carrot that Willie keeps dangling. Like, it would be easy for him to say, yeah, let's get the fuck out of here.
Here's the thing. He's leading Eugene along with his own greed, because Eugene just wants that song so he can become famous. It's not like, I just need to hear this one song. Like, if that were the case, then he should be devastated when there's no song.
And I can't argue with that. His motives, Eugene's motives are not so pure. Clearly he wants, I think he even says this is his shot at entering like the blues, breaking into the blues is the song.
I will say this though. As much as I love Joe Martin in the scenes that we get him in, I do think the dream sequence that Willie Brown has, where Scratch's assistant is tiny when he opens the door and then he grows bigger.
I love that though.
It's a great effect. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic sequence. Might be my favorite sequence in the movie. It should be Scratch. It should not be the assistant. Appearing to him on the Crossroads as the devil's proxy is one thing. Appearing in his dreams to tell him what's in store for him, that's the devil's business.
It should be, but I know they're just saving the reveal of the devil for the end of the movie. So I get why they did it.
And I understand that too. But here's the other thing I noticed. As much as I love Walter Hill as a filmmaker, as an action filmmaker, and dramatically, he's not a horror filmmaker. This would be borne out in his work for Tales from the Crypt, none of which are scary. But he has several moments in this movie that should be horrifying and aren't. When we finally get the devil, it's just like we hear him talking and we turn around and there's the devil. And it could have been a fucking awesome reveal.
Yeah, I agree with you that the nightmare sequence in particular should have been more surreal, more nightmarish, because what's there is effective. Like you said, there's this forced perspective bit where Scratch's assistant walks through the door and they've made the door really big and he's really small. But he keeps it, like, there's something about a nightmare sequence where the person or creature, whatever, walks towards you in POV that it should automatically be scary for the viewer, because you're putting yourself in this nightmare that this person's, and that's what's happening is Willie's having this nightmare about this thing. That I thought it was a very effective nightmare. There probably should have been more of that to sell this idea of how tormented he is. There's not enough of that. I will give you that.
No, and that's the thing. Like, his character as a prick, we appreciate and understand, but they could have done a little bit more to show, how desperate his situation is. This is really a movie about him trying to get back to the Crossroads to get his soul back, as much as everything else we're talking about. And in fact, it's odd to me that he wasn't more upfront earlier in the movie, like, Eugene, it's all real. I sold my soul and I need to get down there.
He does tell him that they're on the bus, and early on in their journey,
Right.
they're on the bus, and he does say, because Eugene is relating all these books on blues folklore that he's read, but Willie says it's real. I went to the Crossroads. Robert Johnson went to the Crossroads, and this is the thing. He doesn't convey the gravity of it. I think even up to the point where Legba makes his appearance, to Eugene admits, he says, I don't believe in any of this shit anyway. So he readily agrees to this guitar duel between Legba's proxy and Eugene. But it is funny.
Which is wrong, by the way. He should, at that point, if that character doesn't believe that he's engaging in a competition where his soul is at stake, then there are no stakes.
It eventually becomes real for him once it's unclear. I think we're meant to think that he gets teleported directly from the Crossroads to this juke joint where the devil is having this head cutting duel. Because at that point, when Eugene and Willie walk into this club, you can see that Eugene is maybe rethinking his cavalier attitude.
That's my point. It should have been, what about you, lightning boy? You want to be part of the competition? I don't believe in any of this shit. And then suddenly they're in the juke joint place and you go, how about now? What do you think? You still want to compete with me? Then it would be like, oh shit. Then he's making a real decision. That's all. There's no agency for the character in that way. It's just another thing he's doing because he doesn't believe that crap anyway.
Sure, but at least the character of Eugene is continually trying to prove his blues prowess and prove that he is the lightning boy. So even just on that basis, I think he's going to give his all during this performance, even if Willie doesn't impress upon him the importance. And really, it's no different than the scene in Karate Kid 2 where he's about to fight Chosen and Mr. Miyagi has to tell him, this isn't for points. This is for real, Daniel. So it's like, I know John Fusco, he says there was no direct influence on his screenplay of The Karate Kid. And in fact, Ralph Macchio, like there were other actors considered to play Eugene. I know Tom Cruise was mentioned. Sean Penn was actually someone else that they said, can you imagine how insufferable he would have been if he had been Sean Penn? But my point is,
I don't know, man. I don't know.
You think Sean Penn would have been a good Eugene?
Yeah. Who else would have been a good Eugene?
Well, I think Tom Cruise would have been good. At that age, I think he would have been.
Timothy Hutton. He's too white.
That's exactly. He's too white. I would say
would
he's
have
too
been
white.
It definitely would have been white savior with him.
Who else would have been somebody who would have been super popular?
How about Matthew Modine?
He could have, because he could have been scholarly. I think he would have played that up.
He could have been. I know I'm just a fucking white kid from the suburbs, man, but this music is important. You would believe him.
You would, because it would have felt like he put in the work to learn all of this folklore. But I don't have a problem with Ralph Macchio. I think he's fine.
He is. And I'm not complaining about him necessarily. He probably got the movie made.
Let me ask you another question, Father Malone. We briefly touched on the character of Frances, if only to say that she's an asshole. But what's your impression of Jamie Gertz? I know the character isn't that rich of a character, but what did you think?
I think they were right to cast her. If she walked into any casting agency, or rather any audition in 1985, 1986, she's so fresh on the scene and she's so fucking capable in every role she's in. She can adapt really quickly to whatever genre. So I don't blame them for casting her. And I think she does a good job, but it's a fucking absolutely superfluous character.
That's another problem that I have with this, and some of this ties in with Eugene. So really, the only purpose that she serves in this picture is she has a dalliance with Eugene. They have sex in this hayloft before getting shaken down. I want to talk about the scene with the sheriffs. We'll get back to that. But the whole point of her being there is so that he can basically fall for her. And then when she leaves him, that all of a sudden finally gives him the deeper understanding of the blues, quote unquote, capital B blues. That's really the only purpose that she serves. I hate to say it because I think it does her a disservice, but that's the character is written. There's no way around it.
It doesn't do Jamie Gertz a disservice. The character does Jamie Gertz a disservice because that is the character's only function in this screenplay. It's to get Eugene to over the hill, finally, to get him to feel the blues deep down. Until then, he's only intellectualized it. And now, because someone has broken his heart, someone who he met and has been arguing with and has had no real attraction to, but on the high from his performance, has sex with her quickly, and then she disappears because she needs to move on. And now his heart is broken.
No, they had sex before he performed.
That's true. That's true. They had it in the barn.
Yeah, and then there's that barn scene, and then
okay,
after he has.
All right, so you know what? Okay, they did have a legitimate fling, but they didn't seem to really like each other. And she's horrible, and he's horrible, and fuck them both.
But I did that scene, by the way. I know you want to move on to something, but the scene where she leaves him and he comes back in, they're staying in some flop house somewhere. And he comes back in and Willie sits them down at this table in this crappy hotel room and pours them both whiskey and basically has a sit down. And that's when he essentially tells Eugene, there's no 30th song. I lied. There was only 29. And that's, putting aside him playing and feeling the blues, that moment of the two of them sitting at that table, there's a vibe about that, Father Malone. It just feels so comforting. Like he's trying to comfort Eugene. It feels like they're seeing each other as contemporaries for the first time. Maybe finally Willie sees him as something other than the kid with no real experience. There's something about that scene I always really liked.
I agree with you across the board. It's a great scene for those two characters. And it is a pivotal scene. It is the moment where Eugene finally figures out how to play this music emotionally, right? But the Francis character has been nothing but a drain as far as time spent between these two characters, because that's what this movie is about. This is a father and son journey, or a brother or a mentor and mentee story. Anything else is a fucking distraction. What should have taught him the blues? The fact that there was no song. The fact that all of his bullshit was for naught. You're not going to be famous. I lied to you, kid. We're out here with nothing and nobody. And you don't have a fucking like a penny to your name to get home. We are trapped. That's when he starts playing the blues. Yeah. Not because the girl he fucked in a barn took off.
Yeah. This is the blues, Eugene. You wanted, because at the beginning, Eugene has taken a job as a maintenance worker at this nursing home / prison just to get in to see Willie. And he keeps pumping Willie for information, trying to understand, is this the real Willie Brown? And at one point, Willie says, why are you so interested in the blues anyway, kid? And he's in his coveralls, he's mopping up or whatever. And he says, because I'm a blues man. And that could not have been funnier for Willie to hear. He laughs so much. The nurse comes in to take him to his medical appointment. He's laughing all the way down. For Willie to finally accept Eugene as a quote unquote blues man, like you said, it's a pivotal moment, because this whole time he's just cutting down Eugene. They have this great night at the juke joint where he plays well. And Willie just cuts him down. He's half drunk and he just says, look, you're not even tenth of the way there. You're not a blues man. I'm only one blues man in this town, and that's me. And it completely crushes Eugene, because this was his big shining moment. So for him to finally say, you know what, I accept you as a blues man, I thought that was really cool. It was a cool scene.
Once again, I agree with you. And I'm going to reiterate, needn't have Jamie Gertz in any capacity to make any of those scenes work.
Yeah, I agree. Because to your point earlier, all she does is get them in trouble. She's going to hook up with some bar owner, and
this
Eugene
racist piece of shit bar owner.
Yeah, but Eugene wants to white knight and save her from doing something she'll regret. So he comes in and try to get her out of there. She tells him, wait behind the door for this guy to come out of the bathroom and hit him over the head and we'll steal his money. That goes awry. They steal the guy's car. They have to later get rid of it and all this kind of stuff. Willie takes them to this juke joint. There's a white one across the street, and he tells them, go in there with this piece and whatever. And she fucks it up. Like she basically she robs a guy in there, causes this big ruckus. They get kicked out. The guy confiscates Eugene's gun, so they get no more gun to defend themselves. Now they got to go over to the black, juke joint, and they're about to get like at least robbed, but probably worse. And that's when Willie saves them by bringing him up on stage and making him play music, because up to that point, Frances has been nothing but trouble. So I agree with you that I don't know why they continue to hang out with her, because she's bad.
And because it's her making all the fucking mistakes, it's not like Eugene is learning anything throughout the movie, right? It's just that he's dealing with the situations that keep arising. He should be failing in there. I not only didn't make us any money, but they fucking took my gun.
He's reacting. That's all that Eugene really does for most of the trip, is he's reacting to what's happening around them.
And playing the blues slowly. That's what Eugene's purpose is for most of the movie.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, one of the things that drove me nuts about him is, so at the beginning of the movie, he is playing acoustic blues. He has this beat up old acoustic guitar. And even Willie, I think it's great. He says like, you probably bought this because it looked beat up. You don't know. So he takes him to a pawn shop, right? And it is a great scene. They pick up an old Fender. It's a 70s Telecaster with the block lettering, a yellow and white, beautiful. And the guy gives him a pig nose amp, and he says, you could be a walking concert with this thing. So whatever. First thing that bugged me is the guy says $400 and all this can be yours. That's a fucking $7,000 guitar. Alone, the guitar is $7,000. The amp, that vintage amp, is probably another $500 on top of that now, Father Malone. That's number one. Number two, when they go to this abandoned house to get out of the rain, that's when they meet Frances. They're running through the rain. He never got a case for this beautiful guitar. They're walking through torrential rain, and the fucking guitar is sticking out of this duffel bag that he has it stuffed into. I'm like, what are you, fucking nuts? You're going to ruin that beautiful instrument, Eugene. You're such an idiot. So that bugged the hell out of me to see that beautiful Telecaster just treated like crap.
Unfortunately,
sorry, I had to get it off my chest.
No, I love hearing that. I wouldn't have thought of that. I would be thinking like the filmmakers were thinking, put the stunt guitar on his back. Who cares? Just get through the shot.
Just killed me to see that. Now, when I was a kid, I didn't care, but now seeing that's a beautiful guitar, and that amp is like that. That amp seems like a goofy thing in the movie, but that actually is a real piece of, like, the Rolling Stones use that. A lot of different bands, that was like considered a cool piece of vintage gear. The other thing that kind of bugged me is that the scene where he's finally learned the depth of the blues and he sits down to do slide guitar. This is so geeky. I can't even believe I'm mentioning it to you, Father Malone, but I've already gotten this far. He's playing the slide, and the sound coming out of the amp is tremolo. Do you know what I mean by tremolo? It's that kind of, it's like a volume quickly toggling quiet and soft, or quiet and fast. The pig nose amp did not have tremolo. I don't know. That bugged the hell out of me because it's not true. It's not accurate. Damn it. That took me out of it a little bit, but because the playing is beautiful, but I know for a fact he's not playing through that goddamn amp. Anyway.
Hey man, if you know something is wrong and you're watching a movie, it's going to take you out of it.
It's killing me. When are we going to talk about Steve Vai, by the way?
Soon.
Okay.
Wait, what do we need to talk about before we get to Steve Vai?
That's what. Okay, I let's get back to that scene
with the sheriffs.
That's another scene I really liked, and I think it's it's one of the more perceptive scenes in the movie, where so they've taken shelter in this barn, but it's not an abandoned barn. People live, someone's barn in the county. This is the scene where Eugene has had sex with Frances in the hayloft. Eventually, the cops come and they're searching the place. And it has to be said, it's a whole bunch. They're African-American cops. It's not a white guy in the bunch. They roust them out of the barn, and they take them to... First thing that happens is that one of them takes their money, basically says, oh, what do we hear? And he takes it for himself. They take them to the county line. And the sheriff, who... I know his name is John Hancock. I've seen him in a bunch of things. What have I seen him in, Father Malone?
Oh, come on now. Don't do that to me.
You know who I'm talking about, right?
I know exactly who you're talking about. The sheriff in the scene. He's fucking fantastic.
He's great. So he's another African-American gentleman. He comes out and basically says to them, you know what? I don't like vagrants in my county. You guys walk across that bridge, then you're Sheriff Tillman's problem, not mine, or whatever. And Francis says, well, what about our money? She says, what are you talking about? He says, our money. That guy took our money. And the sheriff makes a threat to her and basically says, you know what? I think I'm going to take you to the women's farm, the prison. You know what? They're going to love you there. You can be there while you try to figure out what we did with your money. And basically shuts her up. And there's this whole, it's this corrupt angle. And Willie steps in and says, you know what? Lots changed in this county, but I guess a lot has stayed the same, ain't it? And he tips his hat and says, we'll be on our way. I love that because you could have, the scene would have played exactly the same if it was the white redneck sheriff and his cronies shaking these people down and sending them on their way. But the fact that the whole crew, they're African-American, I thought it was really cool. And the fact that Willie called him out on that and said, you know what? Why are you doing this? Like, this is something that I would have expected during Jim Crow era. I wouldn't expect it from you guys, but he just says, we'll be on our way. I love that scene.
Police are corrupt no matter what race they are. That's a Walter Hill trope.
That's true. I didn't think of it in those terms, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, there's a bunch of Walter Hill tropes on display here, including my favorite, which is also race related, which is because you can consider Eugene black here because he's playing the blues with his pig nose amp when he goes into that redneck bar. But the African American in the redneck bar causing havoc, because we see that in 48 Hours. We see that here. We see that in one other Walter Hill film. God, what's the other sort of big old Walter Hill trope? Look, the thing is, if we didn't know Walter Hill was behind this film, I might give the white savior attack a little bit of credibility. But the fact is, Walter Hill ain't no racist. He doesn't believe white people are saving black people at all.
Yeah, no, that's true. And it is funny because that scene in the white sort of bar across the street from the black juke joint it plays a little bit like the scene in 48 Hours when Reggie goes into the bar pretending to be a cop and kind of shakes the place down. I mean, the scene has a different arc, but it definitely is shot the same. Yeah, it feels the same to me.
I'm surprised the bar wasn't named Torchies, because that's every bar in Walter Hill movies is named Torchies.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, in Streets of
I didn't know that.
In Streets of Fire, the bar that Willem Dafoe that they have to infiltrate, what Willem Dafoe is holed up in, that's Torchies. In 48 Hours, that's Torchies.
So that's his See You Next Wednesday.
Yeah, basically. And I think there was a bar in downtown Los Angeles called Torchies, like in the 60s and 70s, that he used to go to, and then was eventually went defunct. But he's keeping the torch alive. Oh, it's in Brewster's Millions as well, Torchies.
Oh, that's a Walter Hill movie, huh?
Uh-huh. And the other thing that why it's so good as a scene is there's no refuge for them. This is the idea of the bluesman. There is no refuge, just the music. It is hammering home slowly here, thus reaffirming that we don't need Jamie Gertz here, because if she's that fucking streetwise, why is she yelling at a cop, give me back my money? Did she think that was ever going to happen? Also, why are they 17? Let's talk about that. These are clearly actors in their 20s. What are we gaining by having them be 17? Just have them be in their 20s. Who cares?
It did. Yeah, that I can see. I guess Eugene could have been older and still have been as naive as he was at 17 or whatever. You're right about Frances, though. Although the only reason you need her to be younger is when the racist bar owner, when they finally get the drop on him, she lays a threat that she's 15. It would not have been believable if she was in her 20s. It would be hard to sell that. That's the threat, is she will tell on him for a dalliance with a minor, basically.
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know. It's all just off-putting. She's off-putting as a character.
She is, and you could have, even if it was just Eugene and Willie, there's any number of things they could have gotten into that didn't involve some creepy, lecherous guy who's trying to get it on with someone. They could have run afoul of any number of racist people on their journey, or people who just didn't want to deal with vagrants. I don't know. You have to ask Fusco, see what he says.
We're asking Fusco, what's going on? Why did you have Francis's character? Did they make you make her? Did they make you add her? We're wondering.
Possibly.
An early draft? I'd love to read an early draft.
Did you think she was tough enough, Father Malone? As the actress, not the character.
No, I don't, because it's Jamie Gertz from Square Pegs. Listen, she has that Anne Hathaway quality of theater kid, but she doesn't have it as bad as it just reeks of it, the sort of superior asshole theater kid quality.
I agree. And that was my impression. I was thinking, like, if they had someone like a young Renee Zellweger who had an edge to her, who could have played a Texan, who she just feels like she could have played tough. When you see her in, I don't know, I'm trying to think of what I don't know. She just feels like she could have been more authentically tough than Jamie Gertz. It's like having Sarah Jessica Parker play Francis, right? It's
right. She's got the chops to play the character, but do you believe her?
And I didn't believe her. Not that it matters, because we both agree that she was rather superfluous. But at the end of the day, like, who would you have had? Who would you have preferred? Who do you think would have been a better Francis?
See, I'm trying to run down a list of people who were popular and or just working at the time. And I'm just blanking on actors in their 20s at this period.
Yeah, it's not like Renee Zellweger was, but I'm just playing fantasy here.
Who would I have play that part? Nobody. I would cut this character out of the fucking movie if we're playing fantasy.
I know, but say the producer said, you got to have a girl in this role. I don't care what you think about the story. Let's just do this. Who would you, if you had to pick somebody? I picked Renee Zellweger.
I wouldn't put Renee Zellweger in. I would cast specific to 85. You know who I put? I put young Melanie Griffith in that role. And I'll tell you why, because Melanie Griffith comes off like a fucking badass. You know what? You can, around the same time she's in Body Double, and her speech about what she will and won't do as a porn actress, I believed every fucking word of her. There's no question she can be tough, but if this character is if we have to have the fucking character and she's just there to inspire the blues in Eugene, then at least make her a goddess.
What about someone like Lori Petty?
No. I would believe that. Look, she's spunky enough to have been the character. Yes.
Okay. I just, we don't have to go much further with this. As a thought experiment, I thought it was interesting to see, because I agree. I didn't buy her as, she wasn't tough enough. No knock on her abilities as an actor. I just thought someone else might have had a better edge to them.
Good performance, bad character, and unbelievable actor in a role. I just don't believe them. Sorry.
Yeah. Agreed.
Where do we go from here? Which is the way that's clear?
I tell you what we have to get to. We got to get to the climax of the story, where, now so they've gone down to the Crossroads, Eugene. They made it, Eugene and Willie. They set up this double or nothing bet with the devil that if Eugene can cut heads with Legba's proxy, this guy named Jack Butler, then he will rip up Willie's contract. But if he doesn't, if he loses to Jack Butler, the devil gets gets Willie and Eugene. So Eugene is putting his soul on the line for Willie. So they're magically transported essentially to this juke joint where,
and if you lose, the devil gets your soul.
That's probably something that maybe helped prime me for liking this movie, because I always loved that song, The Devil Went Down to Georgia. The appeal of the legend of the guy playing the devil for the golden violin. I don't know. I always love that song. I don't love Charlie Daniels, but I love that song.
It's a great song, man. If it comes on the fucking radio, it's getting turned up to full volume in my car.
Without a doubt. So we end up in this club and we get our first look at Jack Butler, played by none other than Steve Vai. Now, Steve Vai, just to catch people up a little bit, I know everybody kind of has this impression of who Steve Vai is, and I'm sure that is, but I don't think people necessarily understand that Steve Vai is really, he's a prodigy. The guy started in Frank Zappa's band when he was something like 19 or 20 years old. He transcribed the song for Zappa called the Black Pages. It was this notoriously difficult composition that Zappa wrote for drums and melodic percussion. And Steve Vai transcribed it for him and sent it to Zappa. And Zappa was so impressed that he brought him in to do transcriptions and eventually brought him into his touring band in 1980. So it's not as if Steve Vai was just this guy wanking off on his guitar and doing all these things. The guy has chops. The guy put in the time and the effort, and he's solid. Technically and theoretically, there's no one more solid than this guy. Originally, though,
is Steve Vai do you think he's a fucking terrible actor?
I don't. I think this is his only
I'm
role.
saying from the producer's, director's perspective, would it not benefit them to cast Steve Vai as Eugene?
Oh, you're talking about having him play Eugene? I don't see that at all, because I don't think he could have pulled that off. He's too old looking. He couldn't have pulled off someone that young.
See, I'm just wondering if he can act at all.
I don't think I think
because what he does in this movie is not acting. It's just him being Steve Vai.
No, but I think you're underselling it. I think there is a little bit of acting.
Yeah, when he starts to get flustered, yes, definitely. But it's not like we're seeing him realize the meaning of the blues.
No, I think if you talk to Steve Vai, I think he would agree with you that he is, or I think he would be the first to admit that he's no actor.
Okay. No, I'm not bagging on his skills. I'm wondering if he could have acted. Do you think they would have cast him? Do you think they tested him?
No, I 100% I don't. Now, here's the whole story behind his involvement. Originally, Father Malone, he wasn't even the one who was going to be Jack Butler. Originally, it was supposed to be Cooder was going to be the devil's proxy. It was going to be him, and it was supposed to be a slide guitar duel.
Oh my God.
No, but hold your horses now. It was going to be between him and Eugene, and Cooder was all primed. He was going to do this, but they realized during the rehearsals and everything that it wasn't working at all. And in fact,
was it because the music was too similar?
Yes, because Arlen Roth, who I talked about at the top of this episode, he, on his SoundCloud page, you can go, he posted the original head cutting duel between Cooder and him, right? Because it was him doing the slide guitar for Eugene, I believe. And it is so samey, it's hard to tell who's playing what. I think it was the right call to bring someone else in, because it just would have been the beauty of bringing Steve Vai in is not only is he very theatrical and he looks the part, but having somebody who's playing a more contemporary style, still blues, but he's playing it in such a showy, because what he's doing is he's actually doing Paganini, believe it or not. He's Paganini, whose Caprice number 5 is the basis for Eugene's Trick Bag, the thing that wins him the duel. Paganini was another musician who was thought to have sold his soul to the devil because he was such a brilliant musician. And when he would perform, he would do things like throw his head back, roll his eyes up in the back of his head and do all this stuff. That's what Steve Vai is doing there. He's doing Paganini.
So Paganini had the original guitar face.
Pretty much.
G.E. Smith is worshiping at the altar of Paganini when we saw him on SNL all those times.
I guess you could look at it that way. But you need to have that friction between the classic blues slide guitar style that Eugene brings up, the quote unquote authentic blues, and this guy who's playing this metalized 80s version of blues. So you have to have that. This is essentially a boxing match between the two of them. I will stump for Steve Vai in this all the time. I mean, if I'm going to watch any part of Crossroads, it's going to be the head cutting duel 10 times out of 10.
It's funny. As a kid watching this movie over and over again, I understand the importance of the scene and I like the scene, but it didn't register with me what was going on between these two. It was, I was watching them play until one couldn't do what the other did, and then he won. That was what it was to me. On the rewatch now, it was what you're saying. And I do agree with you now. Hearing Steve Vai playing these very modern, very sort of mid-'80s metal-y versions of a bluesy kind of a riff, and then having it repeated back with a slide guitar and hearing them bounding off of one another was fucking awesome to hear. Like, I didn't appreciate how excellent that portion of the music was. My thing about Walter Hill's movies and Ry Cooder was I liked Ry Cooder and I liked his sound. And so this sort of attack of different styles didn't land with me as a kid, but now it does.
Yeah. And don't forget that when I love the arc of the whole guitar battle, because it starts off, they feel each other out. And then there's a moment where, because Jack Butler's just throwing riffs basically at Eugene to see if he can keep up or if he's worthy of engaging in this duel. And Eugene gives as good as he gets. And at that point, Jack Butler takes off his guitar, takes off his jacket. And that's when you know as a viewer, all right, this is going up to a higher gear. Now this is really on. And then they play this song together and it feels like Eugene's about to fucking win it all. And that's when Jack Butler hits him again with this little solo piece. And one of the unique things about Steve Vai that kind of puts him in a different category from somebody like Eddie Van Halen, at the risk of being sacrilegious about this, is that Steve Vai had the ability to make his guitar talk in a very real sense. Like, there's a moment where he launches into the solo to basically tell Eugene in musical terms, like, this is it, I'm taking control, you're done. And he plays this little bit and he kind of bows to Eugene and then he bows to the audience. And then he does this kind of hot thing with his whammy bar. It's so, it's so unique and so Steve Vai, and so you know what he's saying, even if he's not using words to do it. And it's easy to see why Steve Vai became the sound for Bill and Ted's air guitar, because he did all the air guitar in all the Bill and Ted movies.
Excellent!
All the props in the world to Steve Vai, man. Of everyone from the 1980s, he always seemed like the solid performer. He seemed like the guy who actually knew what he was doing and was doing it in an interesting way.
I've since looked up a lot of his videos. He's a very humble guy for somebody who can basically play his ass off at whatever he is. I think he's like in his late 60s now. He's pretty old. But what I was leading up to was, so he does this little piece and he's basically trying to close the case on Eugene, and that's it. And then Eugene launches into what's known as Eugene's trick bag, which is that Caprice No. 5 by Paganini. That's Steve Vai playing that. That's the one piece of this duel that neither Arlen Roth nor Ry Cooder are playing. So effectively, Steve Vai is playing against himself at that point, which I think it still blows my mind when I hear
the only person who can defeat Steve Vai
is Steve Vai. And as a kid, I used to eat up these guitar magazines. I was just learning how to play guitar. So I'd buy Guitar Player, Guitar for the Practicing Musician, Guitar World, and I guarantee you, at least once a year after that movie came out, somebody would do a transcription of some piece from Crossroads. It could be the Trick Bag, it could be the Head Cutting Duel. You would see this laid out in tabulature and even now, you go to YouTube and there's still people doing covers of this piece of music. Not only was I, in my own small way, inspired by all of this, but it's no exaggeration to say that countless other people were also inspired. And the proof is in, like I said, these videos, all these magazine articles, even now, it's still people. When Steve Vai performs live now, Father Malone, okay, think back when he first launches into the guitar duel, he does this sort of slow chugging riff with like almost like a horsey sound where he goes, doo-woo-woo. He made that into his own song called Bad Horsey on one of his albums. When he performs live, the movie screen behind him cuts to a scene from Crossroads. It's Legba saying, "Oh, Jack Butler's going to love you." And he mimes the first whatever intro to Bad Horsey, which is essentially the piece from Crossroads. Steve Vai has embraced this. I think Steve Vai loves the fact that he is known to a certain segment of the population as Jack Butler. And he's embraced it to the point where he plays Crossroads at all of his live shows now. I think that's awesome.
He definitely should. Why wouldn't he? My God, he is Jack Butler. He's the devil's guy.
It's great. The guitar, by the way, is in the Hard Rock Cafe, Biloxi, Mississippi.
Can I just say
His
that
guitar.
Legba and the devil are not analogs?
Well, Legba is like some sort of demon. It's not actually the devil. So I guess we're playing fast and loose with the language if I call it, but he's essentially the devil, right?
I know. You know what? You're telling me the fucking Telecaster costs $7,000. I'm telling you that Legba and the devil aren't the same thing.
This is the Venn diagram of our passions.
Friendship. That's right.
It's an intersecting here with Telecasters and demonology. That's perfect.
It actually sums us up, doesn't it?
It is. It's amazing. We've done it, Father Malone. This is like what is that? The Rosetta Stone of our friendship is right here in Crossroads.
It took us nearly 40 years to figure it out, but thank God for Crossroads to come along. Thank you, John Fusco, for bringing us together and sorting out our relationship.
Really? And can I say how pissed I am that Britney Spears movie exists?
Thank you. Because every time I mention I'm going to be watching Crossroads, we're going to talk Crossroads, I get really? You're going to talk about that? I'm like, no, not the Britney Spears movie. I'm like, oh, there's another one? Yeah, there's a fucking another one.
It's unfortunate.
Okay, can we talk the cutting head scene from a different perspective now? We can both agree it's a fucking fantastic scene, musically, dramatically. Now we got to talk about race. Because if Eugene were black in this scene, it would be that much more powerful. That when he shows up, the devil's, being black doesn't even count anymore. This white guy, it can beat you easily. That would have been great. That doesn't necessarily mean that the ending as is bad. But there is this weird implication that the blues is defeated by white classical music that I find a little disturbing.
That, I don't disagree. I will, let me bring up another piece of this.
Andy, here's the thing, and I would not say it if Eugene were black, because it would be like, oh, by the way, white person, here's your own music and you can't play it as good as I can. Then it would have been something.
What's interesting is that there's another piece to this that maybe will lend some credence to that. Originally, when Eugene and Willie arrived at this juke joint, they see Jack Butler cutting heads with another guy. So the guy before Eugene, right? This guitar player that was going to cut heads with Jack Butler at the beginning of the scene was a guy named Shuggy Otis. Have you ever heard of Shuggy Otis?
I have
Shuggy
not.
Otis is this unsung guitar songwriting prodigy. Okay. He did an album called Inspiration Information, which is one of my favorites. He wrote the song Strawberry Letter 23, which was done by the Brothers Johnson. You've probably heard the song. Maybe you don't remember it offhand, but he was a guitar and blues prodigy. This guy, Shuggy Otis. Anyone who's listening, look him up. I'm telling you, he's the real deal. Anyway, Shuggy Otis is African American. So the scene was going to begin with Jack Butler cutting heads with a black man and winning. Okay, basically Shuggy Otis couldn't do it and he loses. They cut that out of the scene partly because even at the time, they thought the optics of having this white guy beat a black guitarist in this setting would have been too much, would not have sat well with the audience. And I would agree with them on that to a certain degree. That's
alleviated if Eugene is black. Look, here's the thing. Eugene should have been black. The movie works as is. I'm not saying it doesn't. Eugene should have been black. The movie would be so much better if he was.
It will, but here's one point I want to make on that.
And if Francis were also black, then that character would work a little bit more for me.
But here's the
black cast.
Okay,
remake. Yeah, I call for a remake of Crossroads.
Let me make my point here. The issue there, Father Malone, is if you have a Eugene be black, then it's not then him going on this journey with Willie, he's not going to learn anything because being black, he's going to already be privy to all of these things.
If Eugene is a black kid from urban New York who has had no experience with what caused that music in the first place, because he's never been treated the way those guys were treated, then that the journey becomes even more valid because it's teaching him about his own cultural past that he has no connection to because he's been living in an urban environment.
But he would have been an African-American kid in the middle of New York City. I think there's very little chance that even if he had grown up sheltered, him going to Juilliard and being in that environment, he must have been privy to racism to some degree.
Yes, he would have been privy to snide, sneering racism. He wouldn't have been privy to get on the ground. We're taking your money. You're lucky we don't fucking kill you here or ship you off to the fucking state farm until we decide whether or not you're worth prosecuting. Consequences.
You're very determined about this point.
Look, man, I really this movie and I just want it to be better. And it's so close to being perfect.
Then let me turn this around. Who could you have had play an African-American Eugene?
Denzel Washington. We're talking 1985?
Too old.
No, okay. What's his name? Fuck. Oh, Saw Gerrera. What's your name?
Oh, Forrest Whitaker.
Forrest Whitaker, 1985. Long and thin.
See, now you're talking.
Remember him in Color of Money where he's playing a dummy just so he can hustle fucking Paul Newman and then he takes all of Paul Newman's money?
That might have been interesting. I'm beginning to see your point a little bit, Father Malone. I still think
Forrest Whitaker in Crossroads. It would have been a whole other movie. It would have been this like dramatic, dynamic thing. As it is, it's just a fun adventure movie with Ralph Macchio.
You might be onto something there because it definitely becomes there's more of an edge when you have Forrest Whitaker, and he could play funny too. He can
play charming and man.
That could have been really good, actually. I'm seeing him there with Joe Seneca going through all these same adventures. I think it could be good.
Toe to toe with Joe Seneca. Joe Seneca putting Forrest Whitaker in his place. Are you kidding? And then Forrest Whitaker walking into that room with Steve Vai. And getting pummeled for a while and then going, oh, yeah, you know what? Let me play some classical Steve Vai. What do you think of that? And win.
You know what's always weird about that scene, Father Malone? They win the head cutting duel and the devil or Legba, aka Scratch, tears up the contract and they finish the blues song. And then there's this weird fade out and it becomes sepia toned on the Crossroads. Are we meant to believe that they've been and Eugene has this confused look on his face. Are we meant to believe that they've just been transported instantaneously back to the Crossroads?
They are definitely, yes. They're now back at the Crossroads. But
so Eugene's confusion is this temporal confusion where I've just been transported to this place again.
Yes, because no matter what happens in Eugene's life, he don't believe in that shit.
But now he does.
No, he doesn't. He's now still confused. I don't know how that happened, but now we're here anyway. There's nothing supernatural. Let's go to Chicago.
Willie even says to him, get that dumb look off your face. because he's clearly, it's like somebody who transports instantaneously somewhere, and they're like, how did I get here? This is
Right,
weird.
because halfway through the movie, it should have been proven to him that the supernatural exists.
Yeah, I agree with you that him being on the crossroads, and that should be like, that's maybe my favorite shot of the movie, is this wide shot of the crossroads where he walks over next to the tree, Eugene, and he starts playing slide guitar to get him to, but even then he's, oh, come on.
Say that again. I stepped in your lap.
So he's playing slide guitar out by the gnarled tree while Willie says, this is where it counts. We got to get them to come out here. And he, even then, Eugene's saying, oh, come on, when are we going to get to Fulton's Point? This is bullshit. He's at the crossroads themselves, and he's heard all these stories from Willie, but yet he still doesn't believe. That does bother Malone.
Scratch's assistant shows up in a magic car, and he talks to Willie Brown in a familiar way, talking about, like, confirming everything that Willie Brown has been saying through the entire movie, and then drives away. And then the fucking devil shows up. He appears. See, this is what
appears.
This is what I'm saying. Like, that scene of I don't know why Walter Hill didn't try to at least go for some sort of shock, if not scare. But if the car had pulled away and in the same shot, there's the devil, it would have been like, wah! But as it is, it's like the car drives away, they watch it drive away, and then you hear a voice, you turn around and go, oh, here's this guy. They're trying to continue to play with this idea that this may or may not be supernatural. We know it's supernatural. Walter, we know it's supernatural.
It is, but it's weird that Eugene never cops to the notion that this is true. For all evidence to the contrary, it's staring him right in the face. Willie has been hammering this home through this whole trip. Like, I need to get back to the crossroads. I need to get back there. Are we led to believe he's just humoring him so that he can learn the song? Because at that point, he knows the song is bullshit. So why are they at the crossroads anyway then? Doesn't make any sense.
Remake.
Seriously. Maybe it's time.
Yeah, I don't know why this hasn't been remade, honestly. Not that I'm saying that, I'm not saying it needs to be remade because that movie is bad. I'm just saying it could be a great movie.
I like your change.
Speaking of which, have you seen the trailer for Ryan Coogler's new film?
The one with the twins, or what's his name playing twins? No, I have not seen the trailer, but I've been reading about it. It sounds like it's going to be pretty good. Is it awesome?
Bootlegging in the South. Michael B. Jordan as twin brothers, one of whom becomes possessed of the devil. It's gonna be like Constantine in the 20s in the Deep South.
What was that movie that the guy who was playing Kang the Conqueror? Lovecraft County. Is it like a Lovecraft County type of thing?
Kind of like that, yeah.
Where it's like it's the Deep South, but it's it's the racism thing, but it's something more sinister behind all of that. Is that what they're going for?
I don't know how much the racism is playing into the plot of the story. I just know it's a story about a crime family in the Deep South, and then there's some supernatural shenanigans, but they're not shying away from the supernatural.
I love Ryan Coogler.
Me too,
that
man.
Guy can do no fucking wrong. So
let's talk about the end of Crossroads because it's so fucking abrupt and weird.
They get teleported back to the crossroad. They're walking. Now they decide they're going to go to Chicago and start to spread the gospel.
Meet Elwood Blues.
Right. And then with the stipulation that Willie's going to leave, he's going to leave Willie after Chicago and take the blues in a new direction or whatever. They shake hands, and then you're right. It is very abrupt. But how else would you want to just end it at the triumph at the juke joint?
I don't know. I don't know what the satisfying ending would be.
By the way, there was another ending that was shot. There were two endings.
Maybe this is the ending I've been looking for.
So there were two endings. One was they had a happy ending, which is the one that we see, and the sad ending. The sad ending is they're on a Greyhound bus going back to New York, and Willie Brown dies on the Greyhound. And
awesome. That's the end.
Apparently,
they were going to get the fucking further adventures of Willie and Lightning Bolt.
The thing was, Walter Hill's father had recently passed away. So there was something intensely, maybe a little too personal for him. So it sounds like he didn't have a real handle on that ending, But frankly, it was just a situation where they test audiences didn't respond well to the sad ending, so they went with the good ending. End of story.
Pussy out. That's what I have to say to that shit, man. That's the end. What's the point? He fucking gets his soul back and then he dies. It's perfect. And now Eugene has the fucking blues. That's the end of the movie.
It would have made more sense because these blues guys all live fast, die hard, basically. A blues man I could very easily see. It's like Hank Williams, right? Not that he was a blues man, but he died in his car outside of Memphis or something. So I could see that being the ignominious end of a blues man, is just dying on the way from Memphis or Mississippi to New York on a Greyhound. That's sad, but maybe appropriate thematically.
It's a little Midnight Cowboy. It's a little less than zero, but they could have him die in other ways.
Yeah, I didn't have a real problem with
falling into the
ending.
gears of a combine. Now that's a way to go.
No, I didn't have a real problem with it, but I also didn't take it as them setting up the further adventures. I thought it was just like, all right, these guys all got what they wanted. Eugene maybe didn't get the lost song, but his future is assured. That's enough.
I don't know. It just felt unsatisfying. Not unsatisfying enough for me to not recommend this movie. I'm recommending the movie. HP, are you recommending this movie?
Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely. The danger, Father Malone, is am I recommending it because it's a good movie or because I loved it when I was 13 years old and I can't get away from that? And that's a little hard for me to, I think objectively, it's a good movie. It's solid, fun movie.
Yeah, not everything has to be the fucking best and not everything is the fucking worst. This is a pretty just solid musical flick that has great fucking music in it and is a good story and delves into a bit of Americana that not a lot of people knew about at the time, maybe still don't know about today. Robert Johnson and his deal with the devil.
Yeah, white savior or not, if this movie teaches anybody about the blues who maybe didn't know about it otherwise, I think that's a pretty good thing. That's pretty cool.
This movie inspired you to play guitar. You went out and bought the cassette tape of Robert Johnson that Ralph Macchio has in the movie, as did I. So, yeah, of course, like, what could be bad about this movie? Nothing. Except Francis is a terrible character and needn't have been there. And Eugene should have been black. Other than that, we're gonna recommend this movie. HP, my man. Let's finish up with a bit of a head-to-head battle, if you will. Steve Vai. Okay, we're going to set him up as the ideal here because he's the devil's man. He's Jack Butler. Steve Vai versus Buckethead.
Ooh, that's tough because Buckethead can use nunchucks while he's playing. That's going to count for something.
Make his playing better, or is that just a gimmick?
Well, it's a gimmick, obviously, but that's here's the thing. I love Buckethead. But no, I can't say that. Buckethead is prolific. He's mysterious. That's a hard question. I don't know, man. I want to say Jack Butler because he's imbued with the devil's mojo. But man, Buckethead is so mysterious and he can play so fast. And he's got that huge Les Paul with the kill switch button. I don't know. I got to cop out and say maybe it's a draw. Maybe they just look at each other and say, fuck, you're good. No, you're good. All right.
Then I can't have a follow-up. You got to pick one.
You know what? For the sake of that, I'm still going to say Jack Butler, but Buckethead's not far behind.
Jack Butler versus Johnny Lang, speaking of blues guitarists and white prodigies.
Jack Butler, no question.
Jack Butler versus Yngwie Malmsteen.
Jack Butler. Yngwie is technically good, but he got no soul.
Joe Satriani versus Jack Butler.
Considering Steve Vai took lessons from Joe Satriani when he was young, I'd have to give the edge. I'd have to give the edge.
Student.
It's got to be Satch, baby.
Okay, so now here's an idea for a movie: Steve Vai as Eugene, Joe Satriani as Jack Butler.
I could be. Joe Satriani is so good. Oh man. I don't know. I'm not convinced of Vai's acting ability, but I could see that maybe.
Another universe. There are multiverses out there. Maybe we can get an MCU version.
Yeah.
And until we figure that all out, HP. Oh, no, wait, I'm going to keep interrupting myself. I'm gonna just before I kick it over to you and tell people where to find you. I'm enjoying these musical collaborations between Midnight Viewing and the Noise Junkies. There are certainly a whole lot of other musical films of this period to choose from. I want to throw it to the listeners to see which one you would want us to do. In order to do that, you got to write to me at fathermalone71@gmail.com or hit me up on the socials, probably Instagram. That's where you'll probably find me the most. That's at Father Malone, but that's at Father Malone across all of them. And so we got to decide what's the next movie that we're going to watch. We should give them some choices, HP. Maybe American Pop.
Ooh, that's a good one. But I thought you hated American Pop.
I don't hate it. I've come around. There are still major problems with it, but there are major problems with every one of the movies we're going to be discussing here, I think. What's another big major musical one from, you know what? Something like Shock Treatment I would like to talk about, I think.
That's a good one, too. If I hadn't already done a whole podcast episode on The Idolmaker, I would have advocated for that because I'm desperate to evangelize that movie. I love it so much.
You know what? I'll leave. That's an option. If people write in about they want to hear about the Idolmaker, we'll do the Idolmaker. So the choices are Idolmaker, Little Shop of Horrors. That's the second one. Little Shop of Horrors is the second one, and the third one is American Pop.
I think all of those three movies are all solid choices. I wish I could think of more off the top of my head, but I'm blanking right now, Father Malone. But any of those would be awesome.
Leave it up to them. And until then, where can people find you if they're looking for you, those same people, if you want to hear HP's more of his stuff?
Ooh, in addition to Noise Junkies, a music podcast, which this is a crossover technically, you can find me on The Night Mr. Walters, a taxi podcast with yourself, Father Malone. We just kicked off season 3. So excited to be back in the garage on that one. I'm also an occasional guest on the Culture Cast with Chris Dashew. And I also have a Bandcamp site, hpmusicplace.bandcamp.com. You can come check that out. Not a lot of blues up there yet. Maybe I'll start to change that at some point. Maybe I should spread out a little bit. But anyway, album just released recently called Wired and Waiting. Please listen to that. And if you like it, throw a couple bucks my way. Help a guy out.
As for me, you're listening to the show. It's Midnight Viewing. But if you want to hear episodes early and commercial free and get access to shows that me and HP do, like Cable Box Theater, head over to patreon.com/Father Malone. You can subscribe there. That'd be cool. But if you don't have any money, I don't have any money. I don't blame you if you don't have any. Just if you could subscribe or like or share this show, that would be greatly appreciated. Tune back in on Sunday or Monday, whenever I'm conscious enough to get the goddamn show done. That'll be the next Father Malone's Weekly Roundup. And tune in next Friday. We've got another episode of Midnight Viewing Horror Anthology Podcast where we're talking about the next 2 episodes of Tales from the Dark Side. Until next time, there's a hellhound on your trail.
Shame on you, Willie Brown, traveling all the way back down home as if you had a chance. Ain't got no chance, blind dog. You sold your soul. You going down, all the way down. Hellhounds on your trail, boy. Hellhounds on your trail.
Have you ever wanted to dive deeper into the horror movies you love, Beyond the Blood is a horror podcast for fans who want more than just surface-level screams. We do deep dives into the movies that shaped us, digging into director commentaries, behind-the-scenes stories, deleted scenes, and the special features that most people skip. Each episode is a love letter to the genre. We break down how these films were made, the creative risks that paid off or didn't, and the lasting impact they've had on the genre as a whole. From 70s slashers to modern nightmares, we celebrate the craft, chaos, and characters that keep us coming back. If you're the kind of fan who rewatches movies with the commentary on, or you simply grew up in the video store horror aisle, the Beyond the Blood podcast was made for you. New episodes every single week. Subscribe, and let's dig deep. Welcome to the Beyond the Blood podcast.
Hey, this is Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast, a show that forces a guest to come up with a movie-themed top 5 list topic, and then we reveal our picks on air. Top 5 heist films, top 5 tearjerkers, top 5 movie dogs. Every show you'll be asking yourself, what would be on my list? Guests include directors, screenwriters, actors, podcasters, musicians, authors, and even a professional wrestler. Subscribe to the Force 5 podcast, and you won't just be a listener, you'll be a list nerd. The Force 5 podcast, available wherever you're listening now.